Good morning. Welcome to those of you who are joining us today for the UCD Sutherland School of Law Summer School. My name is Aoife Ryan and I'll be the moderator for this session today. For the best viewing experience, I would advise you to toggle to the speaker view. I would also like to inform viewers that this session will be recorded. Now, I would like to now hand you over to Professor Imelda Marr, the Dean of Law. Welcome, Imelda.
Thanks, Aoife. Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to this virtual experience of UCD Sutherland School of Law. As Aoife says, I'm Imelda Marr and I'm the Dean of Law here. We look forward to welcome you in person in due course when you come to UCD. We look forward to engaging with students who have an intellectual curiosity for law. I think things that you need to think about are obviously an ability to absorb a lot of detail, but also to be able to take any knowledge that you acquire and analyze it and apply it to very varied situations across life and business and politics. Qualities we would look for would be integrity. Integrity is really important in law. It's important in all university life, actually, but also in the professional world of law. A strong sense of fairness and an expertise. I think expertise has got some bad billing in recent years, but expertise is what universities are about, and certainly what we're about in Sutherland. A key question people always ask us about is the gateway, if you like. How do you get into law? We have 7 different entry routes for the law school. The most common is the Leaving Cert route, but it's not the only route by any manner of means. In general, you're talking about 520 points. That's what we ended up on last year for our 2 programs. Actually, it was 521 and 522. Our 2 law programs, which my colleague Niamh Hallen, who's the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies, will talk about shortly. One is the BCL and one is, which is law. It comes with the various combinations, or law on its own and business and law. We're also very fortunate that we have Sutherland Opportunity, which is supported by Mason Hayes Curran, which provides scholarships for students who may have special needs in order to gain access to university life. And UCD for All, which is the Access Office here in UCD, looks after that and answers queries relating to that. What we're going to do with you today, I'm afraid a bit of talking heads going on, but we tried to intersperse it at least with one video. Is you'll meet or engage with 3 of my colleagues, and we'll have a sample lecture from Dr. TJ McIntyre on digital rights. And we will also hear from Dr. Liam Thornton, who will be talking about human rights and the law. And finally, in terms of order at least, we'll have Dr. Sarah Fuller-McQuillan, who will be talking to you about tort law. Tort is the idea of civil wrongs as opposed to criminal wrongs. What the idea is behind those 3 lectures is to give you a flavour of the diversity within law. People tend to think of law as monolithic, as a single thing, but in fact it's widely diverse. So when you come in as an undergraduate into a law degree, you're really just entering a new domain where there are vast opportunities to specialise in different directions. In commercial law, in law relating to rights, in international law, in European law, public law, property law, tax, crime, a very big range. But there are certain core elements that nearly every law degree in every common law jurisdiction require people to have in order to begin to build their expertise. And that's essentially what you're about in your first 2 years of the programme, with an opportunity to specialise a little bit to begin that process in your 3rd and final year. In terms of degrees, most people will look to qualify as lawyers, though research has shown in the UK, and we haven't done the same projects here, that 10 years out of degree, a lot of people have diversified further and gone on to do other things. But there are a wide range of opportunities beyond the legal professions being solicitor and barrister. You can qualify for Ireland, or indeed, you could, a number of students go to the UK every year, and some go to the US as well. We also have students who go into government, journalism, management consultancy, and some of them are entrepreneurs and go on to set up their own businesses in various aspects, or indeed go on to more literary endeavours. We have a short video to show you this morning to give you a flavour of what it's like to study law. And we're also going to introduce you to some of our wonderful law students who will tell you a little bit about the experience. And we know that the first semester will feel a little different for us, certainly, next year because of the pandemic that we're going through at the moment. But the students will give you a flavour of what life is ordinarily like on campus. And of course, your degree will be 4 years. And we hope to be back to normal, well, as close to normal as circumstances will allow by January, so that you will be able to enjoy a fully rounded college experience. And that said, we also are looking towards, or currently planning what's going to happen in September. It's not entirely clear yet. You just start a little later at the moment. And the subjects you study would remain the same, and we're looking at having a blended learning experience. Blended learning is structured learning that is a combination of online and physical presence. So there will be a mix, but how that exactly looks, we're still working on at the moment, partly because we're still marking exam papers from this year. So, you know, that obviously has to be done first, and then we get to the other question, but we are dealing with it. Afterwards, there'll be a chat function on another website. I'll remind you about it at the end of this session, where you'll get an opportunity to talk to people about their experience and to raise lots of questions that you might have, or we hope you have, in this exercise. I want to say hello to, there's more than 500 of you registered for this call from many countries, so I want to say hello and best of luck with your studies if you're still engaged in study at this stage. Best of luck with an unusual summer, which I know it's going to be this year, and with the decisions facing you when you get results and when you're looking towards the choices that you make this September. And most of all, I want to just say thank you for your interest in the Sutherland School. We're really happy to have people who want to come and engage with us and to start a journey in academic and legal endeavour. Thank you. I'll now hand you over to my colleague, Dr. TJ McIntyre. TJ is an expert in law and technology here in Ireland, actually one of the leading experts, and he has prepared a video that we will now show you. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is TJ McIntyre. I'm an associate professor here in the UCD Sutherland School of Law, and I teach and research mostly in the area of technology law and fundamental rights online. So for this virtual class, I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit about some of the ways in which the pandemic has affected fundamental rights in relation to what we do online and the way in which we respond to the pandemic itself. So we've all been forced to move a lot of our interaction online, and we've already seen quite a lot of privacy issues arising out of that. So Zoom, which you see pictured here in the background, has been one of both the worst offenders and also one of the organizations that's been quickest to begin to clean up some of the problems that it's seen. Zoom has had a series of criticisms that it hasn't provided adequate protection for individuals' privacy, that it doesn't encrypt video calls end to end, which means that its own employees or conceivably governments might be able to monitor what people do on it. It's been criticised for not having enough security to prevent Zoom bombing, where people break into Zoom chats and disrupt them. But they've also recently developed responses to that, where, for example, they have introduced greater use of passwords on Zoom chats to make it harder for people to get in who shouldn't be there. And they've also developed more end-to-end encryption, which means that the content of your conversations can only be viewed by you and not by, for example, their own employees. But the use of this technology creates a number of wider problems as well. So, for example, there are issues there about the level of privacy we can expect as against your employer or even your university in relation to private chats which take place between people on Zoom calls. If you take part in a private chat on a Zoom call, is there a risk that your employer, your university, might see the contents of that so-called private chat later on? So there are issues here with expectations about privacy in the context of online chat that simply don't come up when we look at privacy in the offline environment. And these are important things to bear in mind as we continue to be forced to use these products more for the time being. The second issue that has really been thrown up by the move online is the so-called digital divide, the problem that you might have a lack of broadband in your home, for example. So we've seen a lot of people in a university context, students and staff alike, who have found it difficult to do things because the quality of the broadband at their home, even within Dublin, never mind people in a more rural setting, they found that the quality of the broadband at home has been so poor that connections drop out, etc., which makes it, for a lot of people, impossible to take part in live video calls, and instead they have to, for example, phone in. So there's an issue here about equity in how digital resources are allocated. Not to mention, of course, the problem of having access to the devices that you need to access online services to begin with. So for a lot of people, that means that they only have phones rather than computers or tablets to use. For a lot of older people, it means that suddenly they've suffered a double whammy of being cocooned, so kept away from day-to-day interaction, but also they probably lack, in a lot of cases, the technology or the expertise that they need to make full use of the technology to participate in other ways. So one of the issues that we look at in the context of research and teaching in this area is the question of the digital divide and the kind of laws and policies we need to mitigate that, to make sure that people have full access to broadband, etc., to consider whether internet access should be considered a fundamental right, to think about sort of law and policy responses that will make sure that people can fully take part in a digital society as well as a offline society. The third area I just wanted to flag up for you as an area where we see a lot of issues in this context is the idea of contact tracing. Now, you've probably seen reference in the news to the HSE rolling out a contact tracing app. And in the background here, you have a little diagram taken from Google showing the way in which contact tracing is intended to work. So as you can see there on the left, the idea is that if you talk to people, you're nearby people, your phones anonymously exchange identifiers with each other. And if one of you is then later diagnosed with coronavirus, the idea is that you can then securely notify other people that they might have been exposed to you if they've been in touch with you in close proximity for more than, let's say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes at a given time. And that enables them to get tested or self-isolate as appropriate. Now, obviously, this is a form of mass surveillance. This is something which is only really going to be effective if it's taken up by a substantial proportion of the population. And it's something that creates real risks. If you think about the way in which logs of everyone's movements at all times could be used to identify and punish people. For example, people in the United States at the moment taking part in Black Lives Matter protests. So there are fundamental issues there around privacy and data protection law, the way in which these systems are designed, public expectations about how they might be used, how we make sure that those systems are shut down once the pandemic has passed. And in the area then of our teaching and research, we will be looking at issues such as how these types of applications can be used, how they can be protected against abuse, and the kind of social considerations we need to bear in mind when we're developing this kind of technology. So those are just a few of the types of issues that I work on that hopefully you'll find interesting as an example of how law can impact on the response to the coronavirus pandemic, particularly in the area of digital rights. And for more information on this, probably the easiest way to find it is to follow me on Twitter or have a look at my Twitter feed at TJ McIntyre. Thank you very much.
I hope you all enjoyed TJ's lecture. I would now like to hand you over to Dr. Niamh Howlin, Associate Dean. Niamh is going to give you an overview of the courses we have available in UCD and also the opportunities that are available to students for study abroad. Niamh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Aoife. So good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Niamh Howlin, and I'm one of the academic staff here in the law school, and I'm the Associate Dean. And I'm going to speak to you this morning for a few minutes about what it's like to study law at UCD. So I'm sharing my slides with you. Okay, so if we had been on campus this morning, we would have been in this beautiful building, the Sutherland School of Law. If you do join us in the future, we'll really look forward to welcoming you to our building, and you'll see that it's a state-of-the-art, purpose-built law school with lots of space and facilities for students, and we'll return to that shortly. I'd really like to start by saying a little bit about the experience of learning at university. So university learning is different. You will become an active and an independent learner. So our model is not simply that we transfer knowledge or pass on our knowledge to you. What we do is we teach you how to think critically for yourselves, and we teach you how to find things out for yourselves. So we don't just talk about legal principles in a vacuum, for example. From the very beginning of your legal studies, you'll start to see how law operates in practice and how law affects our daily lives and the way that we interact with other people. And you'll be learning in different ways. So you'll write essays, you'll collaborate on projects with classmates, you'll be carrying out research projects, you'll do presentations, mock courts or moots. And we have a mix of large classes and smaller groups or tutorials where you'll get more one-on-one interaction with your teachers. You'll spend a lot less time in the classroom than you might be used to if you come from secondary school. Usually only a couple of hours a day in normal times, and slightly less than that in this year's first half of the year. And the time that you're not in the classroom, you'll be expected to figure out a way to find a balance between studying and all the other activities that are a really important part of your university experience. So if you're studying law in UCD, you can approach it in a few different ways. You can study law on its own, or you can combine it with another subject. And we have 10 different law degree programs. So if you're interested in history, philosophy, politics, social justice, economics, for example, you can add one of these onto your law degree and study them both together. What this really means in practice is that for most of these, you'll spend 2/3 of your time studying law and 1/3 of your time on the other subject or the other discipline. If you are to study business and law, it's more of a 50-50 split. So it's a slightly different structure. It's a 50-50 split for the first couple of years, and then towards the end of your business and law degree, you may have figured out that you prefer one discipline over the other, and you can choose to specialize then in whichever one appeals to you most. Although there are 10 different degree programs, if you're applying through the CAO, there are only 2 CAO codes. So DN 610 is for business and law, and then DN 600 is for all the other law degree programs. So they're all called Bachelor of Civil Law. Once you've chosen your law degree program, you spend the first 2 years studying what we would consider the foundational subjects. And these are the same across all the law degrees. So everyone takes more or less the same subjects at the beginning. So you'll take subjects like criminal law. What is the difference between murder and manslaughter? And is there ever a good excuse or a defense for violence? You'll do contract law. So what makes a contract or an agreement between people valid under the law? And is it possible to get out of a contract or an agreement if you change your mind? You'll do tort. So what is your responsibility towards other people that you interact with on a daily basis? Property law. So what does it mean to own something? And if you do own something, does that mean you can do whatever you want with it? You'll do EU law. So what does EU law cover? And is it actually part of Irish law? And constitutional law. So what are the rules for how our country is to be run? And what are people's basic fundamental rights? So these are all the foundational subjects you will do in your first couple of years. And then in your third and fourth years, you will have more freedom to specialize in subjects which really appeal to you. So you might develop an interest in human rights law, or banking law, or maybe criminal justice or international law. So you get a lot of choice in your third and fourth years in relation to the subjects that you study. As well as all of this, you will have opportunities to study abroad. And we do actively encourage our students to consider taking either a semester or a full year studying abroad in another law school. If you were to study law with Chinese, with Irish, or with French law, that period of time abroad is built into your degree. But if you're taking any of the other law degrees, you have the option to apply to spend maybe a half year or a year in another country. Now, this map will give you an idea of the kinds of places that you might find yourself on an exchange. Some of these are places where you will need to be proficient in another language, and many of them are also places where you'll be able to take your studies through English. So we have exchange programs set up with law schools all around Europe, North America, Asia, Australia, and you can find out more about that in the Q&A part. Now, Dr. Marr has already mentioned that a law degree can really take you many places in terms of your career. So you don't necessarily have to become a solicitor in an office or a barrister representing clients in court. Those are just two of the very many different types of career that a law degree can lead to. And to help you to figure that out over your time in UCD, we have dedicated careers support to help you to figure out where your strengths lie, what motivates you, what interests you the most, and what type of career would be best suited to you. So the UCD Careers Network do recruitment fairs specifically targeted at law students. They run workshops, they have one-to-one sessions, they bring employers on campus, they'll help you to put together a nice CV, they'll help you to prepare for interviews, and they'll give lots of information about things like internships, where you can get work experience over the summer periods. Professor Marr also mentioned that we have several different access routes for studying law in UCD. So the majority of our students will come in through the CAO, but we also have mature students entry, we have entry routes for international students, we have FET entry, and you can find out all about these various different access options afterwards at the myucd.ie chat, or we can point you to the relevant parts of the UCD website. And we really embrace diversity in UCD Law School, and we welcome students from a range of backgrounds, from different countries, from different educational backgrounds. And that brings us to the end of what I wanted to talk to you about this morning. I thought I'd end with another lovely view of the outside of the law building. At this point, we would usually bring you on a nice tour of the building to show you all the facilities and show you where you'll be spending your time. And because this is a virtual summer school, we're going to do it slightly differently this year, and we're going to show you a short video which gives you a flavour of the physical facilities, and it also shows you what it's like to study law at UCD. So thank you very much for your attention.
Sutherland School, it's all about bringing out the best in students, giving them the skills that they need to progress in the future. And the biggest skill that I learned during my time here is critical thinking and a curiosity and a willingness to learn.
Student at Sutherland has given me some amazing opportunities. I have been able to study abroad in Madrid, and this is a great academic experience, but the most valuable part of this opportunity for me was meeting people from all over the world and experiencing new and diverse cultures.
Well, I recommend the Sutherland Law School, first of all, because practical concerned, like the building is brand new, all the lecture theatres, you have all the amenities that you want, and because of the overall atmosphere around campus and the excellent quality of the lectures and tutors here.
I absolutely encourage any international students aiming to do an high-level PhD to come here at UCD Sutherland School of Law.
Wanted to study in Ireland, then the UCD and the Sutherland School of Law would be the place to be.
I hope you all enjoyed that video, and we look forward to welcoming you onto campus as soon as we can. Many law students are interested in the topic of human rights, and today we are delighted to have a short lecture from my colleague, Associate Professor Liam Thornton, where he addresses the subject and the challenges and opportunities that come with studying human rights. I'll hand you over to Liam now.
Hello, I'm Dr. Liam Thornton, an Associate Professor in Law in UCD School of Law. The question of law and its relationship with human rights is a complex one. So in this session, I want to first speak to you broadly about the concept of human rights. I then want to focus our attention on whether we can identify a right to housing or a right to a home under human rights law. Then I want to very briefly speak to you about kind of challenges and opportunities that studying human rights law can bring. When we speak of human rights, we can probably all think of examples of what human rights are. A right not to be tortured, rights to fair trials, rights to respect for private and family life, rights to practice religion, express political views, and a right to be treated equally regardless of one's sexual orientation or their gender identity. So human rights encompass a broad array of rights which we all as human persons should be entitled to. Now, the examples we've provided are just a very small number of examples of human rights. Human rights law is much broader than just simply prohibitions on the state or other individuals from violating rights. For example, what if we experience homelessness? Do we have a right under human rights law to be provided with a home? And the answer to that question is complex. So let's focus for the next few minutes on that issue of this concept of a right to a home. Because we all know within Ireland over the last number of years, the issue of housing has been one of significant political controversy. As of March 2020, nearly 10,000 people in Ireland had been homeless. Almost 1/3 of all homeless people in Ireland are children. As lawyers, a question then emerges. If we have a right to a home, and if this is a legal right, where do we find such a right? Can you identify any legal documents where we might be able to base a claim on saying that individuals have a right to a home? If you were to look at international human rights law, laws that over the years Irish governments have agreed to comply with, Well, that might provide us with some form of starting point. Various United Nations human rights treaties that the Irish state has freely committed to complying with provide that, in essence, everybody has a right to housing. Yet this international legal obligation is not being placed precisely into Irish domestic law. So just because the Irish state agreed to be bound by this does not necessarily mean an individual can go to a court and demand from a judge that Ireland comply with its international legal obligation that it freely accepted. What about the Constitution? I'm sure you may all have heard of the Irish Constitution, or at least know of its existence. So starting with the Irish Constitution as primary law of the state, well, the Irish Constitution does not explicitly provide that individuals are entitled to housing or have a right to housing. The Irish courts have been exceptionally cautious in recognising what we might label a right to a home. If we were to look at the Irish Constitution, for example, you won't find any statement within the fundamental rights provisions of the Constitution that states explicitly a right to a home must be provided. So yes, the Constitution must protect individuals as best it can from unjust attack, protect an individual's life, person, good name, and property rights. But what happens where an individual is in a position, due to their poverty, that they cannot provide themselves with a home? Does that not mean that their bodily integrity may be compromised if some form of housing, some form of shelter is not provided? Now, the Irish courts, as well as other courts in other jurisdictions, have in essence determined that whether a political legal system provides for a right to a home or a right to housing, that's a political choice. It's not, it should not be recognised or interpreted into a legal document where that legal document does not expressly and explicitly provide, for example, that there is a right to a home or a right to housing. Now, I and others would contend that that's a very narrow reading, even a conservative reading of the Constitution. In February 2014, the Irish Constitutional Convention requested that the Irish state provide for the protection of a right to housing in the Constitution. To date, successive Irish governments have not acted upon this recommendation, but the recommendations have been referred on to an Oireachtas or parliamentary committee for further consideration. Studying human rights law can be a challenge. Often rights can be identified, but there may be significant limitations on such rights. Can you maybe identify any limitations that there may be with this concept of a right to a home? That limitation may be due to, say, a lack of state finances. It may be due to, well, democratic majorities not wanting there to be a provision or entitlement of a right to a home. Yet law also provides a tool for argument. Law provides a tool for agitation. Law provides tools for making not only a legal claim, but also the moral claim that an individual's dignity, bodily integrity, respect that is due to all, due to their human personhood, may be violated due to a lack of housing. Now, the issue of a right to a home or a right to housing is exceptionally complex. What I've been able to present is just an overview of some key concepts within international human rights law. Significant questions about, well, how would a right to a home be funded? Is it appropriate for the judiciary to make a decision on whether a right to housing or a right to a home has been upheld by government or by parliament? All those questions are issues that you explore throughout the entirety of your law degree. Now, in UCD School of Law, you have access to an unparalleled number of courses within many specialised fields, and my particular field of interest, of course, being human rights. Our graduates within human rights have excelled in a lot of areas such as journalism, within politics, as lawyers within Ireland and many other jurisdictions, as well as agitating for the rights of marginalised and vulnerable communities throughout the globe. Now, however your view on whether there should be a right to a home, I hope this brief presentation has at least made you think, made you reflect, and provided you with a taster of one of the many countless legal issues that you'll have an opportunity to study in UCD School of Law. And I look forward, I hope, to seeing some of you at open days, or indeed in in a year or two, studying law with us in UCD. Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed Dr. Liam Thornton's lecture on human rights and how it's relevant within a law degree. Now, one of the mandatory subjects that all of our students take while studying a law degree is the subject of tort. Dr. Sarah Fulham-McQuillan will now take you through a brief lecture on the subject and demonstrate how it's relevant to all of us in our everyday lives.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sarah Fulham-McQuillan, and I teach a range of subjects here at Sutherland School of Law, including medical law, constitutional law, and tort law. And tort law is the subject of today's mini lecture. You'll see from the title of today's lecture, A Missed Murder, a Dodgy Diagnosis, and a Simple Snail, that there's a whole range of everyday issues that are encompassed within tort law. We're going to touch on one or two of those real life cases that those issues refer to throughout the course of today's lecture. But to begin, a little word about why tort law is such a great subject to study. It's interesting and engaging, which makes it easy for you to engage with and to remember, because it's about us, it's about our families, our neighbours, our friends, and our everyday lives. Tort law is about regulating individuals' behaviour and how we interact with each other, and whether we have a duty to care for somebody else or to not be negligent in our actions towards them. As well as that, in taking the subject of tort law, you're joining thousands of law students around the world who have to take as a mandatory subject tort law in their first or second year of study. And it's the same here at Sutherland School of Law. You're also doing yourself a favour, because if you do go on to choose to qualify as a solicitor or a barrister, you will have to take another tort law exam, and so it's definitely worth paying attention the first time around. The word tort is probably something that you haven't really come across in your everyday lives, and there's actually no one particular definition of it. At its core, it means a civil wrong that occurs between individuals, and if an individual is found to have wronged somebody else, a sum of damages will be awarded to the individual who was wronged. So a civil wrong is something as opposed to criminal law. So criminal law is usually between the state and the individual, whereas we call tort law private law subject because it's between two individuals. A sum of damages is essentially a sum of money that the court awards in recognition of the wrong being done. So tort law is a collection of rules made by judges in courts that regulates our behaviour. Common examples that you've probably heard of are medical negligence, product liability, trespass, and defamation actions. So if somebody says something that harms their reputation in the eyes of another person. So they're all examples of tort law claims. As you can see, they're between individuals, but tort law also regulates our professions. So medical negligence regulates the medical professionals. Tort law would also govern any claims that are brought against a solicitor or a barrister if someone thinks they've acted negligently, and also the police. A case that we're going to mention now that relates to the missed murder in the title of today's lecture concerns the UK Supreme Court from a few years ago. So Irish law actually borrows quite heavily from English law in a number of areas, including in tort law. So the UK Supreme Court decided a case. The question for them was whether the police force owed a duty of care to protect individuals during the investigation and prosecution of crime. The facts were that a young woman named Ms. Michael dialed 999, and she feared that she was in immediate danger of violence from her ex-partner. Unfortunately, through a series of errors, the police didn't understand the immediacy of this, and they didn't arrive at her home in time to save her from being killed by her ex-partner. So the question for the court was whether the police had a duty of care to protect Ms. Michael from that killing. The court had to weigh a number of different factors, and this is where tort law gets very interesting, because our intuitive reaction to those facts might be that the police, of course, would owe us a duty of care to protect us. But the court had to take into consideration the wider societal interest as well. And that included having public confidence in the police to do their jobs effectively, which wouldn't be the case if the police could be sued at every turn. And that weighed heavily in the court's determination. So they decided in that case in the UK that the police do not owe a duty of care to individual people in society when investigating and prosecuting crime. I think that case is a perfect example of demonstrating how what we believe to be a right answer in society may not always translate into law, because there are different considerations to be taken into account. The reason why a decision like that can be decided by the court by taking into account the wider societal interest is because any tort law decision that's made affects how we as individuals in society interact with each other. And it determines and sets out the boundaries of what our behaviours are and aren't within the law. So tort law has had a slightly higher resonance within kind of popular culture more recently, with Kim Kardashian West sharing on her Instagram stories about her upcoming tort law exam and sharing her study notes on standard of care and breach of duty, two foundational subjects or topics that we cover within tort law in the first couple of weeks. Legally Blonde also features tort law quite heavily, with Elle Woods being called out in tort law. And actually, coincidentally, the whole series began with the author of the original books sitting in tort law, in a tort law class, and realizing that she wanted to make a parody of law school. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope to welcome you in September 2020 or September 2021.
I hope you all enjoyed that lecture on tort law and found it really interesting. Obviously, your time in college, your lectures are very important, but there are other aspects to college life that are equally as important and help you make the most out of your time in UCD. And for that reason, I've actually invited 4 of our law ambassadors on today to speak to you guys about the other aspects of college life and some of the more fun things that you were able to do. I'd just like to invite all of the ambassadors on now if they'd like to chat with us. You might find this panel best viewing through the gallery view. You can toggle again on your top right hand corner of your screen. Thanks guys for joining us today. You're all very welcome. I know it's been a busy exam period, you've all just come out of it, but I'm just going to hand over to Oren and to the rest of the ambassadors to let you get chatting and to find out some of the fun aspects of college. Thanks, Oren.
Thanks, Aoife. Hi, my name's Oren. I'm a third-year law student here in UCD in the BCL course. So I suppose kind of outside of lectures, there's a lot of ways in UCD to kind of enjoy your time as well. One of the main things I found was that when I came to UCD first, I was from outside of Dublin, so I actually stayed on campus. And in the campus itself, we have a lot of accommodation. And I actually ended up staying with 2 other people from my course who I didn't know. So in the first instance, I got to know people from those that I lived with. But also the student accommodation in UCD have an extracurricular program called Res Life, and this is where I started to get to know more people as well. During the week, they organise things like kind of quiz nights, bowling nights in Slorgan, or kind of movie nights and that sort of thing as well. But then if anyone wants to stay up on the weekend, and especially for people kind of coming from abroad who want to explore more of Ireland as well, they started to do things like kind of day trips to Galway and walking tours of Dublin as well. I actually hadn't known Dublin that well, so it was a really good way for me to kind of get to grips with Dublin as well, even just finding out kind of which bus to get into town, and doing that while getting to know people as well. And one of the other ways I decided to get involved in UCD as well and kind of make more friends and make the most of my time was through the Students' Union. So in UCD, we have the largest Students' Union in all of Ireland as well. And with that comes is actually a great opportunity to get to know people as well and get some really good experience. So when you come into UCD first, you have the opportunity to run for class representative. So through that, you'll represent your class at the Students' Union's general meetings every second week as well. But kind of the more fun aspect of it is that you also are tasked with organising your class trip as well. And in my course, there was 2 two class reps, and we organised a trip to Budapest in the Easter break for about half of the whole year, which is about 60 students, and we all went to Budapest together as well, and stayed in the same accommodation as well. It was a really nice period over the Easter break, and that happens every year as well. In second year, we all went to Madrid as well, and it was a really, really good time, and that's how our whole year group got to get to know each other as well. But I suppose for me, kind of the main thing in making most of the time in UC as well, and I suppose for the other guys here as well, is kind of the societies that we get involved in as well. And we've a vast range of societies as well. I got involved with the Law Society here in UCD. In my time, I was Honorary Lifetimes Membership Officer as well. So over the years, we've had guest speakers in, such as Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council. A couple of years ago, we had Judge Judy, and we've had the script over the last 2 years as well, and David Norris, and a couple of other kind of guests, some funny, some kind of more topical and serious as well, but always generally really good experience for students as well. They're all known for things such as mooting and debating, but actually Aoife has had a lot of experience with them as well, so I might actually fit to talk to you a bit more about the mooting and debating in UCD.
I've just finished up my degree in law this year, and one of the best things that I've gotten involved in through my degree has actually been mooting. So mooting, as I think Dr. Helen mentioned earlier, is basically like a mock trial. So it's where you stand up and pretend to be like in court or pretend to be a lawyer, and it really gives you an insight into what actually being a lawyer is like, rather than just like studying law in a classroom. And so one of the great things UCD has is actually we have our own moot court, or our own sort of classroom that's designed as a court. So it really gives you an insight into seeing what standing up in court is like. So the Viz moot was for me a commercial arbitration moot that was supposed to happen in Vienna in April, and it just gave me a really good insight into arbitration, which is a particular area of law used by a lot of big international companies. You might have heard of like the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is really popular as well. And it gave me an insight into an area of law that I had no experience with before, and something that I would definitely love to continue in my a really good sort of grounding in that. But there's also in the law school through societies and through the law school that you can get involved in like public speaking and debating and that sort of thing. So even if you think that there's a real stereotype for, oh, you know, I need to be really confident, be really able to like stand up and make up an argument completely on the fly, there are so many ways in the law school that you can sort of, even if you know that, you can get to know how to do that. You can get involved in debating, as Oren mentioned, like the Law Society run a lot of debating competitions for students that have no experience in it before, which are just like really good crack. You get to meet people. I've also had the opportunity to travel abroad through debating in UCD, going to the UK a couple of times, but you can also go further afield. Like there were teams that went to Thailand and stuff last year. So there's a lot of like opportunities to travel through. And you can also get involved in like negotiation competitions, which are like where you sit in a like a mock negotiation, and which just kind of gives you an insight into another aspect of being a lawyer. You're not experience from law just from learning in classrooms, so there's a real emphasis on like giving you a full or like mock trial as a module, which is really great. But yeah, so there's so many different ways that you can get involved in like different aspects of law and different like societies, but also if like you want to get involved in the society with a different interest of yours, like for example, I've been involved in like the History Society and different sports in UCD that I can talk about.
Yeah, so thanks Aoife. So as Aoife said, there's a lot of ways to get involved in things which are traditionally associated with the law, so mooting or public speaking or debating, so the kind of things that you'd expect solicitors and barristers to have an interest in, and a lot of us do. Personally, when I was choosing my course, I'm a third year business and law student, I was really uncertain because one of my favourite things in school was history. So I was tempted with the law with history degree, I was tempted with a pure history degree, and in the end I decided to do business and law. But then the idea being that I would come to college and join the History Society as a way of like pursuing that interest on the side. So that's what I did. So I came in, the first week of college life is called Orientation Week. It's where it's only first years and only freshers around campus. So you kind of get used to it without all the big scary third and fourth years walking around. And yeah, so I went along to a History Society event. I think it was on my second day in UCD overall. It was the person I sat beside on the first day. It was like it was a mini quiz. It was probably the third person I talked to in UCD since the time since I went in. And yeah, I got really involved in that society in first year. In second year, I was on the committee, so I was the public relations officer. I made our posters, I met up with people, negotiated some sponsorships. And this year, I actually ran the society, so I was the auditor of the society this year. And it's a really good opportunity to be able to kind of pursue an interest outside of your kind of traditional law degree. So if you have an interest and you're not able to pursue it in the degree you're doing, so I saw a few questions about Spanish and psychology, you can do electives in them, but even if you don't have the time, there's societies for those things. So yeah, so I ran the History Society this year. It was one of my favorite things about college. Every year we went abroad as well. So similar to what Oren said, I've been on class trips, but every year I've also gone on a trip with History Society. And what's even better about that is that the History School pays a subsidy to the society. We're kind of closely connected with the school. So they kind of pay a subsidy to the society to go to kind of historical locations. So in first, it makes it kind of cheap, and it makes it kind of get a lot of bang for your buck. So in first year, we went to Riga for 4 days. Last year, we went to Bucharest for 5 days. And this year, when I was organising it, we decided to go to Lisbon for 5 days just before lockdown hit. So we got back, I think the day before Simon Harris announced lockdown. So we timed it well. But the best thing about it is that you kind of go to these cities, you get to see it, you get to see all the like, kind of historical attractions on a kind of a much cheaper basis than you would normally. And then you get the kind of things you have to pay for yourself, the things that the schools obviously aren't going to pay for, like the nights out, and the kind of class accommodations, the kind of the boat trips, things like that. So you can kind of mix the two really well. But yeah, so joining History Society has been one of my kind of the best things about college life for me. And even though it's kind of outside the traditional law program, as well as that, I was also on the badminton committee for the last couple of years and a few other sports. But I think it's something to kind of be aware of, that you can do more than one society. You can do more than like a particular thing. You don't just have to stay up one end of campus on your law degree. And I think Celine has a few experiences with committees as well, so she might talk about that there for a bit.
Yeah, so I finished my 2 years at UCD, and I've done a lot of society stuff because, well, the timetable is very, very flexible. And, you know, like you kind of get used to like managing your time studying, but also, you know, like being able to get involved with extracurriculars. So I joined the Arab Society as a media officer in first year. So I obviously took care of all the social media, took photos and everything. That was very nice. And then I even joined, I applied for the auditor position, so president of the society. And that was very nice, obviously, because we got to do collaborations with other societies. So the Arab Society is a cultural society. So we've done collaborations with the Indian Society, with the French Society. We even had this very funny event during Valentine's Week where we had how to flirt in 6 different languages. So we had 6 different societies: Japanese society, French, Hispanic. So it was very, very nice. I think that's really the best part about obviously like going to events and joining the committee, and just getting to work with people, meeting people from like different backgrounds. And you know, obviously that's all experience too. So that's really good to have. Like, you don't want to spend your 4 years in college in a lecture theatre. So that's very nice. I even got into debating, not very much of that, but just to say that obviously like we are doing a lot of law in the lecture halls. You don't have to do law as, you know, activities, extracurriculars, and you could do anything you want. There's a lot of societies on campus, so you could do whatever you want, really. So that was very nice, yeah. So yeah, that was very interesting to have.
Thanks, guys, so much. I'm hoping that everybody got a flavour of different opportunities for them outside of pure study in UCD. That was very interesting. All of our ambassadors are available for the day on my UCD for a chat if anybody has more questions. So thanks, guys. I just want to say that we have had a lot of questions coming in, and for those of you who were a little late joining us, that we will be uploading this video onto our YouTube channel. It's UCD Sutherland School of Law, and we'll answer your questions there, but also see our website ucd/law, and your questions will be available there. I'm going to hand over to Professor Imelda Marr for the closing words, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hi everybody, as invariably is the case with these events, I find out lots about the law school by listening in on videos. I want to thank all my colleagues and especially our students for participating. I want to thank you for staying the course with us, for your questions, which we will follow up on. And we, as I said, wish you well in what lies ahead. If you have queries, do go through to the chat function. I think it's the easiest way to find out the questions that you need. And there's lots of information available on our website, or indeed get in touch with us. And we're always happy to help people in the journey that lies ahead of you, and the very best of luck. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.